Hello and welcome to the Fandom Portals podcast. This is a podcast that explores how fandoms can help you learn and grow. We are looking at the Fantastic Four movie from 2005. It was fantastic. I'm here joined by my co-host Brash. How you going today, Brash?
Oh, not too bad. I was going to try and come up with more catchphrases for Fantastic Four, but I realised it's Flame On and it's Clobbering Time are the only two real catchphrases that have, because I don't believe that Reed Richards or
None
Sue
that I
Storm have
know of.
catchphrases.
No, they're very serious. Unless, you know, a catchphrase could be Sue Storm telling Reed to pull his head out of his work. And Reed could be saying, 1 more minute, darling. I don't know. But yes, we are looking at the 2005 Fantastic Four movie that was directed by Tim Story. And in this movie, a group of astronauts gain superpowers after a cosmic radiation exposure, and they must use those powers to oppose the plans of their enemy, Dr. Victor Von Doom. This is the second part of our Fantastic Four 2005 podcast. So make sure you go and check out part 1 if you haven't already. And this is also part of our Marvel month. All month long, we're going to be looking at Marvel material, and we also have a giveaway going on as well. So during the month of Marvel, Brash and I have teamed up to try and gain 15 points from our trivia segment, which usually happens in our part 1s. And if you want to win a family pass to the movies, that's right, we'll send you to the movies on us, then all you have to do is go and join our mailing list, which you can find at www.fandomportalspodcast.com. If you go to that website, you can find where you will sign up to our mailing list. And if you win on the 30th of April, we'll email you a family pass for you to enjoy a movie on us, because we love the theatre, we love movies, and we like going to the movies, so we want to extend that to you guys as well, didn't we, Brash?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Please enjoy on us.
That's how we do it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so in this podcast, guys, in this part 2, we're going to be looking in depth at the characters from the 2005 movie. We are also going to be looking at how they performed, their chemistry, and what we hope for Fantastic Four first steps as well. And we're going to dive into our popcorn perspectives right now. All right, in this segment, we dive into standout characters from the movie. Each host picks their favorite character and takes a close look at why they thought that the character should be given your attention. All right, Brash, the way this is going to work is we're going to pick a character, we're going to talk about them and how they were portrayed through the 2005 movie, what our hopes are for the Fantastic Four first steps, and then we're going to rate their performance and their representation out of 5. Make sense? Lovely. All right. The first character that we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing the man himself, Mr. Fantastic, Reed Richards, played by Ioan Gruffudd. What did you think of his performance, Brash?
Almost perfect, I would have to say. I thought he played the nerdy, work-driven Reed Richards to a T. Like, he was... When it first came out and I saw him on screen, I was like, hey, it's Reed Richards. That's Mr. Fantastic right there. Miles Teller, I love Miles Teller, but when he came in, I was like, hey, who's that guy? He was bigger than Ben Grimm, and they were like it was a good, nice casting, but 2005 casting was on point, I reckon. And Reed Richards for me was absolutely brilliant, and he pulled off the silver fox grey hairline.
I think it was interesting to know that Ioan Gruffudd is a Welsh actor, and he had to try and put on the American accent through the movie. I think he did a pretty good job. There are some points where you can tell.
Yeah, he did struggle. Yeah, because he kept getting new lines constantly. He had to keep reloading new lines, trying to read in those new lines in an American accent constantly. Yeah, messed him up a little bit, but yeah.
I think that Ioan tried to aim for that intellectual gravitas that Reed Richards has, which I think he did kind of well. But some people have said that his performance was a little bit too subdued because, you know, Reed can often be seen, at least in the comic books, as being very cold and calculating and distant to his other Fantastic Four family members. And I don't think he was like that in this movie. He was actually pretty warm towards the other members of the Fantastic Four, or at least he presented that leadership kind of quality very, very well. He always seemed like he was reluctantly doing his work, which is actually the true form of the comic books version of Reed Richards. He's actually always in that constant struggle. He's in a moral struggle all the time with his intellectual ruthlessness of being absolutely driven and focused to try and make the world a better place because he's the only one intellectually that can do it. And also his love for his family that needs his time, that needs his care, that relationship with Sue that needs nurturing as well. So he's always being pulled in so many different directions, which is actually why he got his powers of stretching. So with that in mind, I think that Gruffudd actually played this pretty well. And I think that the only thing that we didn't really see, and we kind of see it a little bit more in the Rise of the Silver Surfer movie, is where he's actually being pulled in two directions in terms of his relationship with Sue and his scientific pursuits. Because in this one, yes, he wants to cure Ben so much. That's like drawing all of his attention. But in this movie, he doesn't really have a relationship with Sue Storm anymore because
he's trying to recreate. So in trying to help Ben, he's working to help Ben, but then in the same vein, he's also seeing that he's also slowly winning back Sue. So he's sort of doing that bit of a totem war. But and this is one of the things I thought was a bit forced in the movie about that sort of dynamic for Reed, was that in then going and taking that one afternoon off with Sue, Victor was able to convince Ben that
he doesn't like you anymore.
And that's why I like it. It was a bit forced on Reed, whereas in as you said, in the second movie, it's a lot more natural because there's a big disaster coming, but it's also his wedding, and he's like, "No, I'm going to get married
under the table,"
but then secretly,
which is exactly Reed Richards through the comic book run. He's always doing the thing that needs to be done at the expense of his family, and that also sort of brings, which I don't think Griffith sort of portrayed as well as he could have, was that existential loneliness that kind of causes for Reed. Like in the comic books, especially the Hickman run between 2009 and 2015, Reed Richards is portrayed as somebody who is going through this internal struggle, not only having all of these cosmic burdens on his hands and trying to maintain a family dynamic where he needs closeness, but also the fact that he is the only one that is fighting these battles. Like he's there with his family, but it's almost like he's fighting them alone because there's nobody else that's really on his level that he can use as an ally to help him in the manner that needs being helped. He does portray the brain in this. He's definitely the scientific minded, and he's also, in terms of his friendship with Ben, I don't think that is as developed as it could have been because, as you said before, it turns on a switch so quickly. They do have a history that we see about through their early interactions in the 2005 movie, but I don't think it's as in depth as the Ben Grimm, Reed Richards in the comic books, but obviously they have more time to develop that too. So let's give this guy a rating. Yeah. Let's give him a rating out of 5 for Ioan Gruffudd and his portrayal of Reed Richards in the 2005 Fantastic Four movie. What are you giving it out of 5, Brash? I was going to say a 3.
Solid 3.5.
I think that is very complementary to his portrayal and also its comic book accurateness with the story and the time that we were given in this, almost 2-hour movie. It was a pretty good read.
Yeah, because it's hard. It's hard to do anything within just the constraints of like 2 hours, and especially building 4 main good characters, and also a bad guy character, and especially a significant one like Doctor Doom. Trying to build those 5 characters in a 2-hour movie.
Yeah, and I think they did do an okay job at developing these characters, but it was to the detriment of any kind of plot. All right, let's move on to our next character, who is going to be Johnny Storm, the Human Torch, played by Chris Evans. I'll go first for this one. When Chris Evans came on the screen as Johnny Storm, the Human Torch, I absolutely loved him as a teenager. He was a guy I wanted to be. He played the hotshot persona, and he was immediately likable. He was a showboat. He showed this youthful arrogance and thrill-seeking attitude. He embodied the flame that he would eventually then go and take on as well. And funnily enough, Chris Evans actually improvised a lot of his lines because Tim Story thought that Chris Evans had the acting chops to do it, for one, and for two, he never felt like Johnny's lines should be something that was planned because he was always the one that kind of played things by the seat of his pants anyway. So Chris Evans, even at that early time in his career, was able to pull off this role very, very well. I think that in terms of his match with the comic books, Chris Evans played that wit and that rebellious kind of attitude and that thirst for the thrill really well, because he, in the comic books, is also one of the 4 and the only one of the 4 who doesn't really care that he has changed. It's almost like he loves the fact that these new powers give him this extra bit of attention and this new ability that he can use. And, it's a really, really good portrayal of Johnny Storm. He lights up the screen. He sells the fun. I really liked Chris Evans as Johnny Storm. What are your thoughts, Brash?
I really liked him in the 2005 movie. I have to say, though, he was a little bit annoying, but not to say that that's a bad thing. I feel the fact that he annoyed me was probably on point for Johnny Storm. he annoyed me like he annoyed Ben Grimm.
I can see that.
Like
Those two's chemistry as well. Ben Grimm, Michael Chiklis, and Chris Evans as the Human Torch. That prankster sort of dynamic as they were waiting inside to be cured. That's like the best montage that they could have done in this Fantastic Four. It built relationship and character development so quickly, and it made us like both of them really well. It's also very comic accurate. I shared a post on our threads today that shows, Ben Grimm throwing this massive water bomb onto Johnny Storm, and it's just like, here's that energy.
And that's what I kind of wish they sort of did as well. Like, to me, it just seemed like Johnny, I think the thing that annoyed me most about Johnny Storm in the 2005 movie, and I think it's because of the fact that they didn't have enough time to foster the relationships. It just really felt like at the start, it was playful, but then towards this like sort of middle of the movie ish, it just started to feel mean. His attacks on the Thing, when like that lady's like, oh, and what do you call this thing? And he's like, oh, that's exactly it, the Thing. Everyone needs a mascot.
He's going through a lot, man. Come on.
Yeah, dude. And so I think for me, he came off like he's got that at the very start. He's really good. The cockiness and everything like that is really good. The daredevils, like him diving, like him saying that the nurse is going to be his future wife, jumping out of the helicopter and everything like that. So on point, so great. Him kissing the girl in the car while he's on the motorbike, real Tom Cruise, Top Gun sort of style. Like, I loved all that. But then when they got the powers in that, he was still okay. But then as he kept griping on and on and on and on with Ben Grimm's character, or Ben Grimm, the character, the Thing, it just sort of was like that got old and just started feeling just mean for mean's sake. Like the whipped cream, that was funny. Like that little like that sort of playfulness was funny, where he had to he was trying to tickle him with the feathers and realized he was a rock and that wasn't going to work. So he ended up using the other side of it to tickle his nose, like the harder stick part of it, to get him to do the slap his face with the whipped cream. That was great, but I wish it was a bit more back and forward, like the post you put on where Ben dropped the giant water balloon on Johnny's. Like I wish Ben, like, no, he's not even a person, he's a thing. Like I get that in the comics, he's a thing, but like in the movie, it just sounds like it just seems so mean.
I think that's part of the growth that we don't see in this movie from Johnny Storm as well, because he stays the same way the whole movie. He's always that Joker, whereas in the comic books, you can always sort of see that he's wrestling with this wanting to grow and wanting to be a protector and wanting to be a hero, which we do see in this movie, but it doesn't really translate to responsibility very much. So until the Silver Surfer movie,
the second one, Silver Surfer is where I actually like Johnny Storm more, because that's when he when he becomes the screw up, when he becomes the problem, and he's like, oh, I need to.
It's a humbling moment for him, which he doesn't get in this movie because he has the coolest power. His life doesn't change very much and everybody loves him. He doesn't look very different at all. And you know what? He's got this energy about him. And he's got that sort of arrogant persona. But in the comic books, it shows that that's actually hiding a deeper struggle with self-image, insecurity that he has. Like he needs external validation because he's so unsure of himself and his position in the team. Like on multiple accounts, he is unable to find a place within the family of the Fantastic Four because they're all so connected and they all know their purpose and their place. And he wants to be these heroes, but he's always seen as this kid that can't get anything right, or this kid that is a hothead, or this thrill seeker that just goes out and does things for fun. And that's the Johnny Storm we got in this movie, which I think is good comic book accuracy for the start of his journey as the Human Torch, because that's literally what it was. From issue 1 to 3 of the original Fantastic Four, Johnny Storm was out for the thrill the whole time. Like he was there just doing rebellious teenage stuff. And then it wasn't until the later runs, like it took until like 2003, and we're talking the Fantastic Four came out in 1961. In 2003, he started to then develop into something a little bit more. So the fact that we got it in the second movie is pretty good. But in this movie, I do agree. I think that he was very immature the whole way through. And I think he did that because obviously he was the one that appealed to the teenage boy audience the most.
But on a whole, as Johnny Storm,
what do you rate it? Do you think? I'll give you mine first. I reckon it's a 4.5 out of 5. Actually, I'll give it a 4 out of 5 because there is that little element that he doesn't really grow. He has no arc through this whole thing. But in the first movie, when as you said, we're developing 5 characters, I think it was necessary to kind of portray him as that almost comic relief, you might say, in this movie. So 4 out of 5 for me.
Yeah. I was going to give him a 3 out of 5, but I'm going to push up to a 4 as well. Noting that he was playing the immature character as well. The reason why he doesn't get that extra, like if they had that back and forth between him and Ben, I probably would have given it 5 out of 5. But he just came off as like, I know it's immature, and he's probably like his own insecurities. That's why he's picking on Ben, because Ben's an easy target to try and elevate himself by putting someone else down. But to me, it was just so mean. It was like so mean. So he did, like, Chris Evans, amazing Johnny Storm. I just wish they had have not had him pick on Ben either so much, or that made it a bit more fun-loving than straight up just mean.
All right, let's move on to Jessica Alba playing Sue Storm, or the Invisible Woman, in Fantastic Four 2005. All right, so I think in terms of the comic book representation of Sue Storm, this is the worst represented character. I do think that Jessica Alba portrayed the Sue Storm in the movie as well as she could have. I think that Sue Storm should be the emotional compass and the moral strength of, Marvel's first family. I think that she was basically heavily leaned on for objectification and the superficial look of her, basically. She was the draw card for the target audience, you might say, in this. And to the point where it is widely said that the titular scene where she turns herself invisible on the bridge, only for the male characters after her to just get through normally. So the pointless striptease, you might say, was in there just to objectify her even further. She had some things to say about that, and that scene wasn't written in the movie until after she accepted the role. So with Sue Storm's character being relegated to that kind of thing was a big disappointment for me, because as I said earlier, she is my favorite member of the Fantastic Four, because she is this emotional rock for the team, and it's epitomized most in Fantastic Four 280 to 284 when she actually becomes a dark persona, Malice, because the boys in the Fantastic Four go without her for a time, and it shows just how much emotional strength they take from her. She's able to reclaim herself in the end, and then it shows that after that, her strengths don't really lie in brute force or anything like that. It comes in her self-knowledge and her compassion and her control, and that is what she then offers to the other members of the Fantastic Four. And she is also probably the most powerful member of the Fantastic Four. She has the shields that can not only shield everybody, but she can create them within a person to stop oxygen or blood from leaving or going into the heart. Like, she is an extremely powerful person in this Fantastic Four team. And I think that, Jessica Alba did the best that she could with the writing that she has done. But I think in terms of her comic book comparison, this is utterly woeful representation for me. I also think that it's always been explained that Sue got her powers of invisibility because Reed never sees her. And I don't think that that's why she got her powers of invisibility and force field. I think that she got her powers of force field because she is the emotional protector of the entire team and her children when they do come along. And she has an power of invisibility because a lot of the time she neglects her own needs for the needs of the team. And in that way, her needs are invisible. So through that justification is how I like to see Sue Storm in the Fantastic Four. And through this, she was really only given power and success through the man's kind of world of her being this scientific figure, or the second in charge to Victor. But really, because he then went and proposed to her, it was almost like she only got that promotion because Vic, to spite Reed,
doing it to spite
which means her
Reed.
entire character development was centered on the fact that Victor and Reed were feuding, which I didn't really enjoy with that. So I think Alba did a good job with what she was given, and she was obviously a draw for the big teenage audience, and she did what she needed to do in terms of the objectification and all that kind of stuff. But I just don't think that it kind of worked for me as a comic book adaptation. What about you?
100% agree. But I feel if it wasn't so, this comes back to them forcing Victor to be the main bad guy in the first movie. They had to have some sort of anchor point for him to be upset with the team, but more so Reed. And unfortunately, Sue became that thing because her portrayal of Sue Storm, I thought, was extremely good. She is the one who's, when Johnny's playing up, scolds Johnny. When Ben's feeling down about himself, says, "No, you're right, man. You're good. It's all good. We'll figure it out. Reed's got this. Just trust him." Blah, blah. And then when Reed's working too hard or getting too focused in his work or getting too distracted by his work, able to pull him out and say, "Hey, you need to refocus. Just take a break, refocus."
Brash, these are really good points, man. These are good points.
So I feel like Sue Storm, the character, and the way Alba plays her, is pretty spot on to Sue. The only thing is that it's overshadowed by the over-sexualization and the fact that she becomes the piece of meat that Victor and Reed fight over.
Yep.
And and yes, that pointless strip scene,
which they did again in the second movie as well. Like really early on, they did it again.
I know. Yeah. And she's like, "Why does this always happen to me?" And it's like, because Jessica, you are extremely beautiful. That is why. And that gets the teenage boys in. Yeah, but I feel like take away those stupid sexualization moments, make Victor's arc bend over 2 movies or 3 movies instead of just trying to somehow make him hate them so much really quickly because of a girl, and that's the only way you can actually do it in that short span of time. Take away that part, and you have a pretty spot-on, perfect glue that holds the Fantastic Four together in Sue Storm, Jessica Alba.
Yeah, one thing I would have liked to see as well was a lot of the time in the comics, Sue kind of leads the team because Reed's wrapped up in saving the world's science like he does. So she takes a leadership role quite often. And I think that that's what they're going to do in the new Fantastic Four First Steps movie. They're going to actually look at Sue as being more of a leadership figure. That being the case, I think that's the case because in the trailer you can see that that Sue kind of leads these 2 individuals through the Baxter building as if she's the CEO of the Future Foundation company, which Reed sort of establishes, and he's more of the TV personality / science guy, basically, that develops all the technology on the side. Like she's the face of the company, and that sort of strategic leadership, I think, of the team was kind of missing as well for me as well, like on an equal footing at least to everybody else.
And again, I believe it. She shows that more in the second movie as the one who's sort of like the starts calling some of the shots.
Yeah, and also negotiating with the surfer as well. Like she's able to do that.
Exactly. Yeah, and she's sort of more taking point. And like even when they're trying to save that Ferris wheel, in the end, Reed comes up with the idea to use Johnny's powers to weld it back together. But it's Sue, like when they're all starting to fall apart, and Sue's like trying to hold this giant Ferris wheel up. She's the one that's like, "Oh, you guys, get together. What are you doing?" Like, "I'm struggling here because I am doing all the work." And then that's when, and sort of it's like, because they're all sort of bickering and falling apart, and Sue's like, "Guys, come on, guys, we need to do something." And everyone's sort of like, "All right, yep, let's get into gear." And then that's when Reed's like,
yeah, they start to click in after the panic sets. But she's the one that sort of snaps them into work mode, you might say. Yeah.
So again, like I reckon Jessica Alba did a really good job. It was just unfortunate that they forced her to be also the eye candy and the piece of meat that the guys fight over.
Yeah. All right. What do you rate her performance?
I rate her performance, if it was purely just of what I see of Sue Storm and just blocking out all the sexualization, I reckon she'd be a 4. But because of all the sexualization that she was forced to do in it, it sort of drags her down to like a 3.5.
Yeah, I'll probably give her a 4 because I think that the fact that she was able to do what she was able to do, but also knowing that they were using her character for that is just a testament for Jessica Alba as an actress. Like she was able to go through and actually lean into the aspects of the character that were like positive in terms of Sue Storm and not let the negative that was happening throughout the movie detract from her performance in other aspects. So you really convinced me through this that, you know, there were aspects of it that I kind of looked at and didn't really appreciate because I do with that thing that a lot of Marvel fans do when they've read a lot of the comic books, which I have, and I'm a big fan of the Fantastic Four comics, where you're kind of looking at it going, that's not what I know and that's not what I love. And it's like the expectation versus reality of it kind of drew me out of it. But when you're putting those points together and saying, you know, she actually does do these things within the movie, it's just on a shorter scale because obviously that's what they have to do in a movie. You really pointed them out to me. Well, Brash. So
Well, I'm going to change my thing about the 4 then, because I'm going to ignore all the sexualization and I'm just going to go based off her performance without those parts.
beauty. All right. So with that, we're going to move on to Michael Chiklis, who plays Ben Grimm, or The Thing, in the 2005 Fantastic Four movie. First things first, Brash. We can't talk about Michael Chiklis without talking about his absolute commitment to this role through his tragic transformation of the Thing. His emotional isolation, but also the actor's isolation in terms of he was the only one wearing prosthetics, and the prosthetics took 3 to 6 hours to apply. It was extremely hot when they were shooting in various locations. However, they did have to do a Canada shoot in Vancouver, and he said he was very comfortable there.
Yeah, everyone else was cold and he was warm, and that was that fight, like the end fight scene.
Yep, that was the end fight scene, and especially because a lot of them were like wet with all the water and things like that. But yeah. You know, he got his payoff in the end. But Michael Chiklis, a massive fan of the comic books, he's definitely there to preserve the authenticness of Ben Grimm and the Thing. I think the main things that the Thing needs is he needs to be the kind-hearted caramel center of the team. Like, he's like the big puppy dog that everyone sort of gathers around. He has the potential to explode, obviously, in moments of anger when his people are being hurt and pushed around. But I feel like he also needs to be that gooey center that really unites and talks to people through their problems and is that supportive best friend or that emotional rock, you might say, to Reed Richards, which I feel like he is, especially through their early breakup with Sue Storm. Michael Chiklis plays him as somebody who's still friends with Sue, understands why she left him, because that's obviously his best friend Reed's biggest fault, which he does not deny. And then, you know, I think he is a character that goes through that emotional turmoil, that bitterness and that loneliness get to him, which is why he succumbs to Doom's offer to change him sooner, and it's why he also gets so frustrated with Reed and Sue after they take that one afternoon off. I think Chiklis played that really, really well as well. He has some critical receptions for this that I've looked up. Roger Ebert wrote that Chiklis brought a sense of humanity to a man trapped in a rock suit, and he elicits genuine sympathy in a film otherwise devoid of much character depth. Empire magazine also commended him for playing the Thing really well. They remarked that he anchors the film's emotionality even while buried in latex layers. So his performance for me was really good. 2 things I wish they did in terms of his character development, which I don't know how they could have done, but it's comic book accurate, and which is what I want to see in Fantastic Four First Steps, is obviously his cultural identity is that he's a Jewish superhero. So I would have liked to see a little bit of that. In First Steps, they've got Ebon Moss-Bacharach, who is a Jewish actor, to play him. I'm not sure if they'll dive into that, but maybe there'll be some subtle nods. And then also, the Thing is Ben Grimm is a very prominent member of the Yancey Street gang in New York. He grew up with nothing, basically, in the comic books. He was a street kid, and he still has those ties to the community of New York. And we didn't really see that in this movie because he's villainized a lot in this movie by the New York individuals. The only time when we get a hero mention is when he walks into that bar and the bartender says, "This is Ben Grimm, the only schmuck from Brooklyn who actually has gone into space." So he has that street level creditation there. But I wish they kind of leaned into that more so that Chiklis and the role of the Thing, Ben Grimm, would actually start to feel a little bit of acceptance for his new form. But the biggest thing that they had to get right for the Thing is that he had to be the one that was playing the person who was the most emotionally devastated from this transformation, which I think he did very well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, because I thought I got shit on the whole entire movie.
Oh, yeah.
I have to say, Michael's probably out of all of them, as much as I do love Jessica Alba-Sue in the underlayers, Michael was probably the best performer in this whole entire movie, and the one who probably took the most care in it.
Like, even adding scenes like on the bridge when his ex-fiance comes and leaves the ring and he goes to pick it up. It was his idea to actually struggle with picking it up, which was literally tear-jerking when you watch that.
That is so hot.
In front of everybody.
And and like, you just imagine like the rest of the crowd just looking and just watching him try to pick up this ring and no one's like helping him. Like, so it's just so like, but I do like that eventually, like when the police go to arrest him and everyone's like, and the five people like, "Hey guys, he's a hero," and everyone starts clapping cheer for him. I did like that. And when I first watched it, I was like, this is it's going to start turning around for him, and people are going to like, because initially, because that's because that was their first sort of showing of their powers to the public. In that scene that everyone cheering for me. For me, when I first saw it, I was like, oh, cool. This is when people are going to start turning around, and there's still going to be some fear towards him, but this is where it's going to start turning around, and it's going to be everyone's going to start accepting him gradually more now, and then that's pretty much straight away forgotten. But everyone cheers him on the bridge, and everyone goes back to hating him again straight after that. It's like,
Yeah, I think that was important to do though, because obviously Ben's arc through this whole thing was finding that self-acceptance, and I really liked at the end when he obviously succumbed to Doom's proposal to turn him early because he was not comfortable with who he was in himself in his new form through this change and traumatic event that he'd gone through. He wasn't comfortable with who he was because he had this strong attachment to who he was previously, and he couldn't fathom, being this new version of Ben Grimm. But in the end, he decided to change himself back to the Thing in order to help his friends, which was a really good character development moment where you got to actually see, hey, this is the Thing, and the same way with the comics that, is self-sacrificing, gives for his family and the Fantastic Four, and actually, puts other people first, which is what he kind of does, sometimes to the detriment of himself, but he is always the one that is being turned to for those moments of strength, whether it be physical or emotional. So I kind of like that his arc went in that way. And then by the end of the movie, when Reed is at the party on the boat and he's talking to Ben and he says, I could probably do this, that, and the other to fix you up. And Ben actually says, you know what? All good. I'm good as is. That's like the best culminating part for his arc for me.
Because of the way they went, I think everyone cheering for him on the bridge sort of then makes that whole end arc of him self-sacrificing or turning on them, then being like, no, I need to help my friends. And I can do that is how I was. And I'll do that for them. It sort of takes a step, makes that take a step backwards, because all these people, he was on camera, he was being filmed, everyone's cheering for him. I kind of wish that they'd cheer for the others, but still looked at him with disdain, because realistically, he's the one that started that crash by staying in front of the truck to save that guy.
Yes,
he did
quietly. Yes,
he did the right thing by saving the guy. But in the meantime, you saw a taxi fly over into a bunch of gas tanks and explode. The dude inside that car's dead.
Yeah.
Straight up, so many people died in that crash, and then the explosions. That saving that one guy who wanted to kill himself. I mean, honestly, probably. I mean,
Yeah, that's the bridge scene there. That is like, it's a great production scene because the amount of CGI they used and all of that, all the work was really great. But unfortunately, in the story, the way that it was is just like, it just made no sense. It was kind of like they needed to let the Fantastic Four show their powers for the first time, and that was the best they could come up with. That was, yeah. So, like, they could have made Doom come and zap some stuff, or just a regular old car crash.
That, or even like introduce a different bad guy to right there to for them to be like, oh wait, we got powers now, we can help in this situation, and then show that, and still like everyone be like, oh man, that's so cool, he can stretch, oh man, that's so cool, he turns into fire and flies around and shoots firewalls, and then oh cool, she can go invisible and make force fields and stuff. It's a rock. And they could still do that, and that could still make that sort of separation between them and alienating Ben, because everyone's all fascinated with them, the other three, and still has to stay towards Ben, which can help that sort of self-loathing grow.
Yeah.
To the point where Victor's
proposal is actually attractive.
Is more attractive than, hey, they went away for the night or for an afternoon for a couple of hours. They've forgotten about you. It's like, and realistically, the thing was ready, and Reed was like, it's ready. We just somehow need more power. That's all they needed, was more power to run it, and it would have worked.
Yeah, the science was thin in this movie too, which I didn't like for a Fantastic Four movie. I needed some techno babble like Star Trek to keep it like.
But like the whole thing was ready, but he wanted to make sure, and that was another good thing about Reed, him being so meticulous, and it driving everyone else nuts because he's being so meticulous. He just needed more power, and it would have worked. But he was struggling in that moment to try and find a source of power like that could do it, because Victor had to throw a fair chunk of
his energy in there.
His energy, but he drew a lot of it out as well. But he gained a lot of it as well from the discharge. Yeah, he in that afternoon, he could have came back, we would have been refreshed and been like, all right, guys, we need a lot of energy. Oh, we have a supernova who could probably create a lot of energy.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't we use Johnny to
power it up?
Enough power to power it up. Oh, problem solved. But they're like, but then here comes sneaky Julian McMahon, hey, they've gone out for the evening. They don't love you anymore. They think you're ugly and hideous too. Ha ha, they're never going to fix you, even though the machine's pretty much done.
Yeah, he needed to get in quick. But yeah, I think that's another time where the writing lets down the character development. But in terms of the actor, and the character, I think, yeah, I would rate him. I'd probably rate this guy a 5. I think 5 out of 5 for me for Michael Chiklis and the Thing, just because his commitment to the authenticity, and also, actually, I'll probably give it a 4.5 because I don't think
I'll give it a 4.5.
He wasn't as sensitive as I'd like the Thing to be in terms of like how he was emotionally there for the rest of the Fantastic Four, I'd say. But, you know, he had just gone through a very traumatic event, and at the moment he was very self-focused, I guess you could say.
Yeah, well, because like within the span of like not very long, he got turned into a rock monster. His wife, who they like when they're talking about, it's like, you know, so like we're going to be together forever, no matter what. And then she's like, nah,
straight up,
nah. He went through enough that would break any normal person, and his resilience, I think, is detrimental in that. And what actually I liked so much about like him, because as much as Johnny annoyed me about how mean he was to him, his resilience in just brushing him off and everything like that, and just crushing his car and throwing
little popsicle ball. I like that.
To me, he needed to do more kind of that stuff where Johnny does stuff to either tease him or do stuff like that, so then he gets him back by just driving his car. Also, I agree, 4.5.
Very good. Yeah. All right, so let's get into our most valuable takeaways. This is the MVT section, the most valuable takeaway, the heart and soul of this podcast, where we break down the one thing that hits hardest, stuck longest, or taught us something new from what we just watched. It's our moment to spotlight the takeaway that made us think, feel, or see things differently, whether it's a killer quote, a moral punch, or a next level piece of movie craft. This is what we learned from Fantastic Four 2005. Do you want to go first on me?
You can go first because mine might tee off you.
Okay, so my one is about Ben Grimm, and it is about the inner struggle for acceptance. So my most valuable takeaway from this is sort of in answer to the question, what do you do when something irreversible happens to you or a change happens to you and it changes how you see yourself or how the world sees you? And it's very, very hard, and it happens to everybody. It's something that happens throughout everybody's life. And I think that for Ben, it wasn't just about the fact that he changed and his looks changed, but his identity changed. Like his self-worth changed. It was tied to his humanity and the way that he was normal and the way that he interacted with his friends and his relationships and his significant partners. And he then had to sort of shift, and he had to force himself to relearn how he saw himself. But then at the same time, he was going through the fact that other people kind of saw him in a different light as well. So it kind of equates that worth with appearance and or function, like what he's able to do. And I think that that's a pitfall that sometimes people fall into, where they look at external validation, and there's also this initial desperation to undo that change, like especially when traumatic events happen, it's like people want to undo the bad thing that had happened to them. Whereas when we hate who we've become, then you become vulnerable to like exploitation. And you got to kind of learn that no external change will resolve the internal rejection that you feel for yourself. So the thing about the thing is when he actually chooses to be the thing again, that's when he realizes, he stops seeing his condition as a curse. He accepts his identity as more than just his form. And, he's showing up with what he has at that time. And he has this self-determination that he can enact change and be himself. And he gains this self-respect and this community and this sense of purpose that he's able to move with. And it's also that message that, not all change is chosen and not all change is visible, but every change gives us a chance to either resist and remain bitter or accept and adapt and grow stronger, which is what I think he was able to do by the end of the movie. It's kind of like, because for the longest time with me, I was always somebody who I valued for myself. That's something that I wanted to change a lot about myself, was that I wanted to be like organized and punctual and on time to things. And I wanted to be able to complete complex tasks and be able to do all those things. So I had this self-perception of what I kind of wanted to be. And I was constantly trying to fix that about myself all my life. And then when I got a ADHD diagnosis, I kind of had this mentality where I was like, well, I can't do that because it's who I am. Like, that's who I am. And, you know, it wasn't the fact that I couldn't do that anymore, or I couldn't work towards doing that. It was the fact that my self-perception of it was that now, because this is now labeled, it's actually like a quote mark detriment to me. It's something that I can't do, where in fact I kind of just had to learn new ways to do it instead of what the normal ways that people would try to do those things are. So for me, I kind of resonated with him, even though my transformation, you might say, wasn't physical. It was kind of like a mental change for me, where I kind of had to come to terms with the fact that the identity that I wished for myself and the one that I was working on, I had to shift the manner in which I was trying to achieve that. And it was really detrimental for a while, because I was like, why isn't this working? Why can't I stick to this? Why can't I do this? So in that way, and it's taken heaps of time. It's taken so much time, more than a 2-hour movie. But that's kind of what I gained from this, is that change that you go through, you know, it doesn't always have to be visible and doesn't always have to but it has to be chosen. It has to be something that you choose to do, and you have to accept and adapt and then grow, which is what Ben Grimm was able to do in this movie. And, you know, I'm still working on it, but I feel like I've been able to do it in some level too with my thing. So that's my takeaway. Thanks, Ben.
That's beautiful.
Thanks, man.
And I'm pretty much going to have to piggyback off what she said, because mine was pretty much the same, well, similar vein to yours in acceptance, that shit's, no matter what, whoever you are in this world, shit's always going to happen, and sometimes you just got to roll the punches and just have that. It's hard to do, but have that acceptance of yourself.
Yeah,
like how Ben has to, how eventually he comes to acceptance that for him to do what he needs to do, and what he thinks is right, and how he feels in that is to protect his family. He has to make that sacrifice of becoming the thing, and accepts that, and becomes really like his true self. By accepting that. Same with like Johnny in the second one, where he's like has to sort of let go of that attention seeking and vanity to become someone that the other team can actually rely on, instead of becoming a nuisance.
Yeah, he had to drop that mask, like the mask that he'd been portraying to everybody that made him feel safe, because he was showboating, and because if people don't like that, that's fine, because that's not really who I am. Nobody sees the broken me because they see that showboat, and that's fine. But whereas with Ben Grimm, his difference was there for everybody to see. There was no masking. That's the thing. And, you know, when you're going through things like that, it can lead you to some dangerous paths, because you look for quick fixes, and different things work for different people. But, you know, it's a lot of people look for quick fixes in situations like that, or external solutions, or validation from others. It's like a common human thing. But you got to learn to become sort of self-determined and get that sort of respect and have self-acceptance as opposed to other acceptance.
Yeah. And Fantastic Four, and this is what I think what you were saying about the 2015, how they wanted to show the body dysmorphia side of things. I think that all of them have go through, like all of the Fantastic Four are prime examples in different ways of acceptance. So Ben's is more physical acceptance. Johnny is more of a
internal
emotional maturity acceptance, and Reed's more of a he needs to accept the love and care of people around him and join in on that.
Yeah, and also the limitations of his own intelligence as well. Hubris is his.
Hubris, yeah. Instead of being like, he may be one of the smartest people on the planet, but that's not going to solve all of his problems. And then Sue she just needs to accept the fact that she can't be the emotional rock for them, or in the heart and the soul of them all the time. She needs to take time for herself.
Yes, perfect.
And just needs that time to self-reflect and recharge. And as you were saying too, like I think, and everyone goes through something in a similar vein, but always different. And it's just about accepting that fact. Like, I wish I was taller. I wish my hair wasn't starting to recede, even though I'm trying my best to not let it recede. I wish I was in better shape. But not that I'm in terrible shape, but I wish I was just in like the shape I was in like 4 years ago. Not even that long ago. And kind of like, there's things I can do to fix that, but then there's also other things in my life that are stopping me from focusing on that. And there's just so much going on, and just at some point you just have to be like, all right, I can't focus on trying to do all these things. I need to focus on one thing at a time and just accept that life is chaotic and that I can only do certain things, and that I can't do everything at once.
Yeah. And I think also there is that acceptance and that realization that there is a version, and this is for everybody, it's like there is a version of you that you can be proud of. And it's not like all the way down the road. Like, you can be proud of who you are right now. And there are things about you that you can be proud of right now. And you might be looking at the things that you're lacking in terms of what you don't have. But there are also a lot of things that you might have that you can be really sort of accepting of as well. And I think that's the focus shift that Ben went through in this movie. He had to be accepting of the fact that, hey, in this particular situation, these changes that occurred to me are actually really helpful because I can go and assist my friends. And that's something that I value. I value being there for my friends, and I value being able to help others. And this enables me to do that really, really well. But then also, he, not so much Johnny, but I feel like that there is like a subtle acceptance that happens between Johnny and Ben at the end when they sort of meet up and he puts a hand on his shoulder and Ben says, you did good, kid. And they kind of have that little moment. There's definitely like a back and forth between them, but I think he surrounds himself, and in the comics especially, he surrounds himself with people that love him for who he is, and that's the part that helps him through, is because he can see and look at the parts of himself that he likes as well, which is what I think is the takeaway too.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like, you have to accept the now and work for the future. If not accepting the now and you're too busy trying to focus on too many futures, then you're never going to get there because you're splitting yourself off in too many directions.
That's Reed Richards' problem as well, literally, because in the comic books, he actually forms a council of Reeds because he can't solve all the world's problems alone. So instead of doing any sort of self-work and actually, like,
I need more of me.
Yeah, he's like, I need more of me to do the jobs I can't do. Instead of him going, actually, this is just out of my wheelhouse. I can't do that and I need to accept it.
Yeah.
And, that kind of self-determination is admirable to a point, but also it causes a lot of problems because it leads to the arc, which involves the Maker in the comic book series, which is just a very volatile version of Reed that's basically solving everything at all costs, no matter the humanity that's involved. And I think that, like, that is a very important aspect of it too, is accepting the now is good. All right, let's rate it. All right, the Fandom Portal's on a board, guys. It's time to rate and rank. Each host gives the movie a score out of 5. Then we take the average and add it to our official Letterboxd on a board. If you want to follow along, you can find and track our rankings anytime you like at our Letterboxd, which is at Fandom Portals. All right, Brash, what are you giving Fantastic Four from 2005?
I was going to give it like a 3.5, but after like how much we've talked about it, and all the things we talked about within it. And even when I was talking about Sue Storm, so I was just talking because I like the character. And the more I was talking about it and how you're saying that it helped you change your mind on Sue, I think I changed my own mind on Sue a little bit. Talking about because actually just talking through it, I was like, yeah, no, she does
a lot of that.
Do a lot of that thing. And yeah, so I think I'm going to give it a 4.
Nice. I like it. Initially as well, I gave it a 2.5. Initially, I gave it a 2.5, but I think after talking about it and seeing how, with the time span that they got in this hour and 40-something minutes, with that and the amount that they kind of developed the characters that they need to and how they tried to make it as comic accurate as they could. I'm a character guy, so I like characters in movies a lot better than I will deal with a character-driven plot movie. We cannot fight the fact that the plot in this movie is thin. The villain is absolute trash represented in terms of the story. However, he has played well with what has been given there. So I'm probably happy to give this a 3.5. It is going to have, with your rating of 4 and mine of 3.5, it's going to have an average of 3.75, which means we have to determine whether it is better or worse than Spider-Man No Way Home.
I honestly, again, this is still hard.
This is hard.
I'm going to say under though.
I will probably say under as well.
but like by like say if it was like the average was 3.75, like Fantasy 4 would be like 3.74.
Yes,
Oh, hey.
only just.
Only
below.
just.
Okay. So we're going to put it on our fandom portals honor board, guys, and it is going to sit underneath Spider-Man No Way Home, which means it is 7th overall. It sits directly above Sonic the Hedgehog. So it's in our top 10. Leading the fandom portals honor board is still The Crow with an average of 4.25. So we'll see how we go. Let's go into our sign-offs. All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is the end of our first episode in our Marvel month. We have just looked at Fantastic Four from the 2005 era. If you wanted to join our community, you can do so by looking at our threads and our Instagram and also our Reddit. Those links are in the show notes below. And as you may have heard, we are doing a giveaway. If Brash and I are able to earn 15 points by learning so much about all the Marvel movies that we're doing, then you will have a chance to win a pass to take yourself and your family to the movies, because we love sending you guys to movies. So if you wanted to join that, if you wanted to be entered into the giveaway, then you need to go down into our show notes and click on www.fandomportalspodcast.com, or just type it into your web browser and sign on to our emailing list, and we will draw our winner on the 30th of April, and you may be able to send yourself to the movies with your family, or you can just send yourself 4 times if you want. In May, there is the Thunderbolts coming out, which is a Marvel movie, so you'll get your pass just in time for that. So make sure you go and enter our giveaway, because it could be you. It could be you sitting in there with a free movie on us here at the Fandom Portals podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, here we are a small podcast, so we really thrive on word of mouth. If you would share this with a friend, that would be absolutely amazing. Anybody that loves Fantastic Four, any member of your Fantastic Four family, or just somebody that likes superheroes or Marvel. Next week, Brash, do you want to talk about what we're doing next week on the podcast?
Yes. So next week will be New
Mutants.
Yes, I have a soft spot for this movie, as even though it was critically not good, according to most people, I have a soft spot for it.
I think there are elements of this that we can definitely enjoy. The New Mutants that was made in 2020, directed by Josh Boone. That is our next movie that you can see on the Phantom Portals podcast. Make sure you follow the show so you will not miss that episode. Brash, it has been an absolute pleasure. Some may say it was fantastic.
Hey, and for all our listeners out there, sometimes you may feel physically rocky. Sometimes you just might be invisible. You might feel stretched too thin, or sometimes you just might be overwhelmed with the fire that is this world currently. But just remember that we love you here, and we appreciate every single one of you.
Can't top that. See you guys. Thank you so much.